Welcome back to another exciting episode of Life in Cyber. I'm your host, Josh, and today I'm being joined by Kenny and Shannon. John is in Vegas, not with us.
Sucks.
Yes, he does. And in today's episode, we'll cover 23andMe, celebrating special occasions virtually, and augmented reality. Let's talk to it. Before we get started, I do want to proudly announce that we have hit the 50 podcast downloads this week. Got an email for that this morning, which is nice. Considering that our last podcast did not publish properly, sorry about that, everybody. I'm not sure what happened with our scheduled posting, but considering we still had an episode to go up there, that's not bad. So that's 50 downloads in 6 episodes. Not too shabby. Our next goal, I think, is let's try to get our YouTube subscribers up. So if you haven't already, and you know who you are, subscribe.
Do it.
All right.
Click the button. Click it.
There or there. One of those spots. You know what?
And the bell. There's a dingy bell.
Yes. I'll play with it. Let's see if I can put it like right here. Right in front of my face. See if I can do that in editing.
With the crossed eyes.
Right here.
Thank you all to the early and loyal listeners, by the way. We greatly appreciate you.
Yes, thank you. All right, 23andMe data leak. This one's interesting because I think the big thing is what can we actually do with that data? I know before the podcast, Shannon was joking that you might find some family members you didn't want to learn about, or maybe you weren't ready to approach that long-lost cousin, long-lost parent that you've been researching. And now that data's out there. But what else can someone actually do with this?
Well, let's get into a little bit of what happened.
Yeah,
true. I guess.
So let me catch you all up. So 23andMe announced a few weeks back that they were subject of a quote-unquote hack, right? So there was a breach. Data was collected, but it was not published anywhere. So they didn't quite understand the impact. They didn't understand exactly what occurred or how bad it was. Today they announced, and today at the time of this recording, October 18th, they announced that the leak of 4 million user records were published on a hacker forum, which included user and genetic information. 23andMe believes the attackers used credential stuffing, which is where people are using already breached credentials from other locations on their website to get in. And so they're asking their users to change passwords, sign up for multi-factor authentication, etc. We strongly suggest doing the same. Use multi-factor on as many things as you can. And also, don't use the same password on every website for this reason. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about is kind of the impact of this type of data. So Shannon, take it away.
I really don't think it's all that different than getting HIPAA information. I don't know the structure of their data, but it might include their name, address, phone number, along with possibly their social security number, medical record number. I don't really know how 23andMe processes this information, but it's always the thing that people have joked about, I don't want to donate my DNA. They're going to steal it and harvest it and clone me. So it's kind of ironic that a DNA company basically has had their information stolen. So I kind of want to know if anything sketchy is going to come to light out of it, if we're going to find out about some type of DNA cloning program that they have in the back end.
I think this is definitely your standard run-of-the-mill data leak, right? As far as user data goes, it's probably emails, passwords, maybe addresses. I don't think social security numbers. I would guess 23andMe isn't collecting that, right? But genetic data is a new thing that, like, I mean, I guess people have joked about it, but we never actually like talked about it in a cybersecurity sense on this podcast. And I actually think there might be a lot of opportunity to use genetic data for certain things, right? Like, if you think about different types of, let's say, like illnesses or diseases or something like that, like those can be linked to certain like genetic traits, right? I don't know that like the average run of the mill attacker is going to know what to do with that data, but what if they did?
Or is a company
Like,
going to take that information and look at it and be like, well, Shannon has this DNA sequencing in his family line, which means that he is addicted to cake. So let's send him targeted ads for cake.
right, I think it comes down to like, especially like, what's the monetization of that? Like, I'm thinking of like, I was quickly surprised with location data when I was talking to some folks that work in GIS, so geospatial analysis, a lot of what they do. And they were
Mm-hmm.
telling me that like when it comes to location data from your phone, you can most of the time identify a person off of 3 data points. So it would be like, one is your home, one is where you work, and the other is like, your mother's house or something, right? With a 4th data point, it's guaranteed because that's like your grocery store. So you can really like hone down where someone is and then use that to identify an individual. Granted, like in this case, they've already got the individual's identity, but what do they use with what can they use genetic data for? And I go into things like, well, what are areas that use like biometrics? What are areas that, as we talked about 3D printing last week, can you use stuff in those regards? And this is where I'm a little futuristic. I think right now the answer is probably not, but it could be. And now that it's out there, they could just save it for now until something is developed that can use it, right?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I don't think the technology is there yet, but that doesn't mean it can't be. And the question is, will they actually save it that long? I don't know. I like to call my developers at work digital hoarders because they keep absolutely everything. It's okay to delete that old code from 20 years ago, guys. But things like this, maybe it does have value. I mean, if they take grandma's or grandpa's data, sorry, grandma and grandpa, but they're probably not going to be around by the time they can use it. But they can still use it and, yeah, maybe sell it off in some other way. I think advertising, I think of kind of the way Google has monetized a lot of our data. I just don't see it with DNA, at least not yet.
And this is where I
Definitely
would
not
like
yet.
to have a guest, especially from like lab or someone who does work with blood that could actually sit down and have an opinion on it, but I really don't know.
It's an interesting topic, and I think like I work with a lot of folks in bioengineering, and maybe I could pick their brains. Not right now; they're going through accreditation stuff, but someday I'll sit down with some of them and talk to them, just water cooler chat and see if we could get some more info. But the first thing that comes to mind for me is like how they do a lot of like genetic archival. So like there are facilities in like the Arctic where they're literally just taking like the genetic sequences of certain animals and plants and storing them in case of an apocalypse, so that way they can like germinate the planet, so to speak, right? So that's a thing. And I consider this like the long-term investment of a data breach, right? Like if you really want to see something pay off in like 30 or 50 years, like this is the type of data you want to just hold on to just in case, right?
I guess if they want to know more about me, that's cool.
I
Or
guess
if
the
they want
question also becomes how long do they have to hold on to this data, or is there any laws around that? Do they have to follow similar to HIPAA rules, is because it's so new they can kind of hold on to their very first customers' data and never really get rid of it, or can they keep the metadata of that? I'm like, all right, we have this person's family tree, we have their blood type and a few other points, and then everything else is gone, and we can at least alleviate some of that concern. But I don't know if there's really any laws around this space. But kind of like Shannon said, I think a guest, maybe we could dive deeper into this if any of your bioengineering cohorts are willing to jump on the show with us. I think we could have definitely a deeper session. Maybe that could be the focus of a cyber episode. But as for tech news, I think that much we can really talk about, at least not too
I think
deep.
if any of you are listening and you know about this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
we definitely want to talk about it. We want to hear more about it. Leave some comments down below.
Yeah,
We'd love to
seriously.
hear your perspective. That'd be awesome.
All right. I think that's kind of it for now until we get our guest to talk about this a little bit further. All right. So let's move on to life. Virtual family traditions, celebrating special occasions online. I think this has always been something in the back of my mind, especially growing up. My mother is from Peru. My father's from the Dominican Republic. I have family in both areas of the world. And that was kind of, I think, the hope and dreams of something like Facebook, especially when they expanded globally, is to be able to communicate with family from abroad and really, connect and stay connected for longer amounts of time. They get to see pictures of my kids, and, we kind of keep up on each other's lives, from afar, kind of a bird's eye view. And it helps, but how do we do that for holidays? I know I never really celebrated too many holidays with them. Maybe I'm trying to remember as a kid if I did anything. I know I went to Peru for one of their like summer celebrations at one point. But how do you guys celebrate with people virtually, if at all?
Well, I don't know about Shannon, but I know that I've had to a bit during the pandemic. I think was during like, and that's probably where this topic really kind of grew a lot. Like, suddenly this idea became a lot more mainstream when everybody's told they can't go anywhere, right? So, I definitely have attended birthday parties. There was one year I wasn't able to go visit my family for the holidays, which to me is like a mainstay. Like, that's something I always make time for, especially for my grandma. Like, I love my grandma. We're really, really close. But it's one of those things where, there was one year where I couldn't visit. It wasn't safe to visit. If I, it was before vaccines and all of that. And I wasn't sure if there was anything that I could bring back to, my grandma who's, not doing well with her health. Like, I didn't want to be the reason why she got sick. Right. So, I felt really bad, and so I taught grandma how to use FaceTime, and it was okay, I guess. It was a little awkward. It was like a video recorded phone call. It's not any different than anything unusual, and to me, it was not the holiday experience, right? I really didn't get to talk to anyone other than her. We didn't really spend a lot of time like joking or whatever. It felt really awkward. It wasn't natural. Um, it wasn't like I guess like one of what me and my grandma like to do is we just sit at the table. We'll shoot the shit, but honestly, we like to like look outside, talk about the hawk that just like snatched up a chicken, stuff like that. Like, and so it's kind of hard for us to have like what I would consider like a manufactured conversation where we're looking for things to talk about instead of just reacting to the world around us, which is how we typically operate. But when it comes to like the birthday party that I attended, it wasn't bad. Like, we all got on a video call and we all played like Jackbox games. It was okay. Again, it kind of felt a little unnatural and it felt like a little forced, but it was fun. Like, I didn't hate it. It was just different.
I've never really had to do a celebration that way, but during the pandemic, there were times when I wanted to see my mom and dad. So, like Kenny, I taught them how to use FaceTime. And the majority of the time, it was coming from Peyton. I want to see grandma. Okay. So I would dial up grandma and hand her the phone. My experience with talking to my mom and dad that way is they don't know how to hold the phone. So it was a lot of seeing up their nose. But it worked. My mom would show me what she was cooking, and I would comment and get yelled at about whatever I made fun of at the particular time. But, nothing really stands out to me.
Now, I have seen like virtual weddings and virtual funerals, which are to me really awkward. I've been invited to both, and I've deliberately said no to both. I think that especially with funerals, if you were close with that person, like, I almost find that like just watching, the video with your camera off or whatever, like watching remotely, like, to me personally, unless there's like like a legitimate reason that you can't go, like, to me that's disrespectful. And I think that's just my own personal thing about like I always feel like I have to kind of show my respects for those that have passed. Um, so whenever like if I'm going to do that, I'm going to show up, right? That's kind of my personal mentality on it, even if it's difficult. Although if there are some people like if you have like a health reason for not being able to go or something, like I think that that's a really good thing so that they can pay their respects and that they have that opportunity. But again, it's awkward. It kind of takes away from the emotion of it and it takes away from like that togetherness of those like major impactful moments. And I think a wedding is definitely not the place for it unless of course like you've got someone who again, like has like a legitimate reason for not being able to attend, like, you know, your dad's in the hospital or something like that, like that makes a lot of sense to me, and by all means go for it. But if it's just like, well, I wanted to do it in Hawaii and most of my friends couldn't travel for Hawaii, is like, well, maybe you should pick something where your people can like join you. You know, I don't know. It depends on the intent and the reason behind it for like major events like that. I don't know.
You know, it's funny that you say that. I mean, I use it a lot. I think the kind of the grandma situation just to kind of have a quick chat, and I think that's perfectly fine. I think we've all gotten used to that. But yeah, celebrations are a little weird. Um, However, I that's kind of a neatish idea. Even if you don't go to Hawaii, maybe there's family or friends that can't make it to their wedding for whatever you want to do. But maybe one of these party planners can come up with some cool like games to play while you're doing things at the wedding, you know, or a way to initiate a kiss. Like in, you know, traditionally you just hit the glass with your, you know, fork or some kind of utensil, or maybe a drinking game or something. I think there's maybe something there that I think would be kind of fun for a virtual wedding or something like that. But yeah, I would never do a funeral in that sense. That feels awkward.
It is.
Yeah, I
um
wouldn't go.
Go ahead. I think the other thing though is kind of thinking like right now we're thinking of like how people are doing it today, and I think a lot of people are just treating it as Zoom meetings, right? And I think considering the way that like most offices are working now, like we're all getting that Zoom fatigue. Like we don't want to use our free time for that too. As I say that while we're doing this for a podcast in our free time. Like it's one of those where I definitely think that like it's a lot harder to separate that like work from celebration time when you're doing it virtually. Like we tried like some happy hours and stuff virtually with coworkers where, you know, we used to do a monthly happy hour at work where we would go to like a nearby bar or restaurant and we'd all grab a beer or two and then go home, and it was a great time and it was a good way to like build camaraderie. But over Teams or Zoom it just didn't feel the same. Like yeah, we all had a drink and, you know, we would cheers and we would still play a game or something, but it just, I don't know, there was something about it that still made it feel like work, and I think that's part of the problem. But I also think that we could take this to the next level of it doesn't have to, right? You don't have to do it through Zoom. You can do it through some sort of like, you know, you could do like VR chat. You could do, you know, Discord video games, right? Like the voice chat is the important part, but jump into an actual game that's immersive so it pulls you away from your surroundings, you know? Even if you're just in something silly like VR chat and you just sit at a table and chat, like what you've done is separated yourself from that world that makes you think of work, right? So I think there are better ways that it could be done. I haven't experimented a lot with it, but I know it's possible.
Yeah, and I don't know how I space this. I must be more tired than I let on, but every Christmas we would actually do a Skype call. Back when it was Skype, now it's Zoom with like family in Colorado and stuff like that. Um, it was always short, just a hello, you know, happy holidays type of thing. But it was never trying to like invite them into the big things. I think there was a year where we tried to like open presents that way. It just felt weird. It was awkward. You're like moving
I
it
think
around. It's like, see what I got?
I think a lot of it is because you can't read the body language of other people. It's just neck up.
Yeah, if it's that, you know, like Kenny said, or like you said, Shannon, with, you know, grandma and grandpa not holding the phone right. Even kids are the same way. Like there's times where my kids are talking to grandma and they'll put the phone down on the couch, or it's like pointing up at the ceiling and they're like, I can't see you. And they're like, huh? It's just, it's weird. But yeah, I think going into kind of that virtual, more of a virtual way, I don't know if I'd want to talk to grandma as an avatar or however you would actually do that. To me, that's a bit more awkward.
That's probably true. I think it depends on the situation, right? Like I'm thinking something along the lines of like a happy hour or whatever, right? I actually did do like during the pandemic, I had a date over Skype. That was weird. But I will say that like there's a psychology around like that in-person togetherness, right? Like I think, and I don't know exactly how to like describe this scientifically, but there is like psychologically a different effect when someone physically touches you. Like even if they just touch your arm or your shoulder, like, you know, grandma gives you a hug or whatever, like that releases different chemicals in your brain. Like it changes your neurochemistry and makes you feel different, right? Whereas like you don't get any of that through a virtual interaction, right? You still feel isolated. You've got your headphones, you've got your, you know, your blanket, your chair, whatever it is. and you're just talking to a screen, even if you are very well connected, and very close with the other person on the other side, you're still missing that like physical touch aspect, and even just like feeding off of that like emotion and energy in the room that you can feel. It's a sense that you don't, that that's not very logical. It's not brain, or well, it's stupid to say it is brain oriented, but it's not like the most observed sense or feeling.
Yeah, it's like not feeling the warmth of one of your friends who moved away to New York like 13 years ago. And the only way you get to see him is through a stupid podcast.
It wasn't 13 years ago. It was 11. 11 this past August.
After a decade, it all just feels the same.
Oh, Shannon needs a hug.
Well,
yeah, I could have one if you were here, but you're not. And I'm not going to hug my monitor again. That just got weird.
I'll give him one for you when I go down in a week or two.
So I guess expanding on that, our cyber topic is augmented reality and bridging that in the physical virtual worlds. Not to go outside of the PG-13, but to kind of go into the whole brain chemistry and the chemicals and all those types of things that release when we're, bonding with each other, not only in a, mental sense, but a physical sense. Kind of going off the rails a little bit here, but when do you guys think, and I'm not sure if you guys have seen the movie Judge Dredd, but when do you think we'll have that kind of level of augmented? And obviously this goes a little bit more rated RX, but if you guys remember that film, I believe it was Judge Dredd, that's kind of how they had intercourse. They kind of put on these headsets and then they just gave them the sense of, I guess, an orgasm. You guys ever see those films at all?
I have not seen
Judge man.
Dredd, but I have seen like some films like toy with that idea, and even some like games that I've played where it's like, you have this, you go into a virtual reality. So it's not augmented reality, but it's more VR. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of like get immersed into that situation. And yeah, it's got effects. Sure.
Isn't that what they did in Avatar? Because the guy was in the machine and then he took over that body.
That's a little different.
But it started out with augmented reality. He controlled that creature, whatever they're called, and then their tails like connected, and I think that was the sex. I don't know what they're called.
The natives from wherever that Pandora land is.
I'm sorry, not Judge Dredd. Demolition Man. Completely wrong movie. Okay, I was thinking Sylvester Stallone, but not. Wrong movie, sorry.
I love Demolition
Man.
So
Demolition Man is when they had these headsets, like these AR headsets, and like, hey, and then they like going through the experience on a whole different level.
And Sylvester Stallone was so disappointed.
I don't blame him.
That was really funny. No, I still remember the 3 seashells about that movie. That's my favorite part.
Yeah.
And Taco Bell.
Yep. The aliens are called the Na'vi, the indigenous species that live on Pandora.
I just remembered that Pandora was the name of the planet. I forgot the rest.
Yeah.
I just know that the plot of that movie is the same as The Last Samurai.
Well,
White guy go to foreign place, save people, become savior, etc.
Also known as Pocahontas.
Yeah, Pocahontas as well.
Honestly,
it's a common trope.
I can't think of a good use for augmented reality. I sat and I tried all day to think of a good use of augmented reality, and I think there are some sectors that it does fit into, like marketing, gaming, sales. I think maybe the porn industry are really
Are
good
you thinking
sectors.
augmented reality or virtual reality?
Yeah, I think you're thinking more virtual. Augmented, I would say there's so many uses. Virtual.
Right, there's so much more for AR than there is for VR, in my opinion.
So with augmented, you're talking about like having Google Maps kind of pop up on your screen, like, oh, you're turning right here, like just a little arrow popping in, versus virtual reality is like taking everything over. Right. Yes. So
I think both are gimmicks. I do not.
Yeah, like this is more VR than AR, while like the new Apple headset is a bit more of a, AR, VR hybrid where they can do both.
I'm going to strongly disagree, Shannon. Like, I'm going to say, like, AR has a lot of places and it's already been used, especially in military, right? Like heads up displays for pilots, right? That's a huge thing and has existed for decades. That's not even new. But they're starting to find ways to integrate it in like in consumer areas, right? We're seeing cars now who have like GPS maps like built into their windshields now, so you don't have to stare
A
at
lot
a
of
phone.
luxury vehicles.
Right, so you see that it's not necessarily like completely legal, but it exists. It's not like out. I don't think it's out for sale, but there's been a lot of models exist like pushed
Who
for it and
cares?
a lot of discussion around it. What do you mean, who cares? It's AR. That's the
It's on my
point.
stereo. Why do I
But
need to have a
it keeps your
transparent?
eyes
It
direct
keeps
rather
your
than
eyes on
moving
the
your eyes
road.
off.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, it's going to make
Technically
me
safer.
cross-eyed and crash into something because I'm going to be focusing on the car on my windshield.
Not if it's done correctly,
If it's
right?
done correctly, yeah, it's a ghost of an image. It's enough to tell you, hey, I'm taking a right at that end of the block.
It's not going to look the same as what you see now, because what you see now it implies that you're already looking at an interface. With the AR, like you've already got the road, and so what it will have essentially is just like a line on your windshield that looks like it's on the road that you're driving on, and then it will have like a little right angle on the road that you're supposed to turn at that you're actually physically looking at, right? So
I just see it as a way of polishing a turd. You're doing the same thing again.
It's a very
It's like
shiny turd.
It's like a reboot.
it's
You're
a
rebooting
massive
GPS for
iteration.
the third time.
It's not a reboot, it's an iteration. It's an improvement of the next level, so you don't have to have it on a separate device that gets you to look away from the road.
Is it
I'm
an
a big fan
improvement
of that
though?
one. I
And they're going to
think
charge
every
you for
iteration is
another
important.
device. They're going to charge
I'm
you for
saying this,
another
and I don't even
device.
own a car, Shannon. You're the one with the giant truck.
Yes, which has a giant 12-inch screen, which is why I don't need it.
Here's a fun thing that your truck does use that you use a lot: assisted parking. That's AR.
It doesn't have assisted parking.
Well, okay, I might be using the wrong term, but you know how on the screen where it shows you like where you're going to park and it lines up like using the cameras on the outside, like
It shows you the
using
lines of your car. Yeah, your reverse.
Yeah.
It's not automated parking doing it for you, but it is showing you what it is. That's augmented reality, sir.
No, that's a camera.
That's
Yes,
AR.
the lines are AR.
uses a camera.
So there's the camera, and then the lines that it's creating for you, especially have like a newer car that actually bend depending on how much your steering wheel's bent. That's augmented reality.
That's why it's called augmented reality. It's not virtual reality. It's not replacing it. It's in addition to.
It's enhancing it.
I'll give you the one.
It's polishing the turd.
I could do the same thing, get me some really narrow strips of tape, and I could tape it to the lens and probably do the same thing.
Probably good.
So these to me are like the really like super obvious ones that are happening now. I see a lot more potential, right? I work for an engineering school and we have a construction program. And one of the things that we talk about is using augmented reality to overlay onto like a construction site showing like this is project progress. This is where it will be in a week. This will be where it will be soon. And they will actually use things like phones with AR software to do measurements on like sites to understand like, hey, this is what needs to happen here. Granted, like they do better measurements with drones, but if they need to do something quickly, they could easily just pull up a phone on with software, use AR, it'll overlay onto, the site that you're pointing the phone camera at, and it can actively do measurements to show like this is this area, this is this area, this is the volume of this little pit in front of you, stuff like that. Super useful in engineering and construction.
I don't know if you guys have seen the ad on LinkedIn. I know I've seen it. I wish I remember the name, but there's the idea of having augmented reality glasses that you put on and help someone who might have fallen or someone who's having a heart attack. They have a defibrillator right there, and it tells you exactly where to put it so that you're not making the mistake. So it almost helps you get to the point of like, all right, I'm putting this on the right spot. I'm putting this in the right spot. I'm knowing the right amount of pressure to put on. Like, that's huge, to have that, especially in a big corporate environment where, maybe the company nurse, if it has one, is 2 buildings down. Or when I used to work at Vestas and we had this giant construction site or this giant site where we're making these giant towers, like we had an on-site, nurse, but there's no way she could get down the quarter mile or half a mile down to one end of a building in time if someone was going through something that critical. So something like that, where it's like, all right, let me put this on, let me see what I have to do. I think that's huge. I think it could be life-saving, and I think AR has massive capabilities.
Are they gonna pair it with the defibrillator that you have there and just
Yeah.
have glasses hanging around everywhere?
Yeah, you literally leave it in the safety box that it's stored in, and I love that idea because right now, like my university requires or doesn't require, but they do optional trainings where just people have to like voluntarily sign up for that. But those people may not be present when something happens, right? And we literally had a guy die on a few years ago of a heart attack, like in a big like open format like floor, like in his cubicle where he had a heart attack and people tried to help him and it didn't work. And that something like that could have potentially helped in that case. It could take people who are not trained in that situation and still help them react.
Maybe it's just me and the environment that I work in, but we have to take several CBLs on this stuff. Even me in IT, I have to like know spills and falls and know how to go out and help people. And granted, if I hear someone scream, I'm going to run to the closest nurse and be like, I work in IT, I'm an idiot, come help me.
I think that's because you work in a hospital. Not all of us have that luxury.
Yeah. Well, you know, if you work in construction and you have to deal with OSHA, then maybe you should have some CBL trainings on how to deal with that crap.
Maybe, or if you, in my case, work in education, we don't necessarily have any laws that require that unless it's K-12, right? Like
All
when
I
I was
remember,
working at elementary school, I had to learn how to like help with like seizures, and I had to work with like disaster recovery and stuff like that. But ever since I entered higher education, like none of those laws are there because it's not minors, right?
all I remember from education is you flip the desk and you hide behind it, or if it's an earthquake, you get underneath it.
Yeah, and actually in higher education, they don't even teach you that. Like we barely do fire drills. Like I'm the only person in my building that's trained on how to respond to a tornado, and that's just because I worked in K-12. Like we literally don't require any of that training legally speaking. It's really strange, and maybe it's just the state of Colorado. I have no idea. I just know that we don't require it as a university. Maybe we're breaking the law, and I just got us out. Sorry, guys. But I do think that AR has so much more potential. I really like. I'm going to go back to this defibrillator idea. I like that even more for paramedics or for anybody who might just like be in a situation where yes, they may be trained, but also like adrenaline really messes with your ability to think and react logically. And unless you're incredibly well trained and very well practiced, like you're not going to be able to react in every situation properly. And having something like that assist you, even when you're supposed to be trained, will still make sure you do it correctly. And I like that a lot better in that situation than just like random folks. It's good for random folks, but I see it being used much more frequently and more actively with those that should have the training already.
I'm still not
By
buying
the
it.
way, I have a fun theory. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't.
No?
It's a gimmick.
He doesn't see it.
No.
I have a theory, and I've been saying this for years. I think that monitors are going to go away soon. Like, I think that eventually, and I don't know when this is. 5 years ago, I predicted it would be in 5 years, so clearly I was wrong, and I might still be wrong. But I think at some point, there's going to be some sort of AR device that will replace the screen, and there will be no need for it. Because right now, like desk space, wall space, all of that is complete waste when you could potentially just like have I'm going to use Google Glass as an option, but it's probably not the best one. But like a pair of glasses that gives you the same resolution, the same experience, etc., just more individualized. Like that would be so much better used in a work environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't have to worry about like real estate, desks, space. You can literally just work wherever so long as you've got your little like, glasses and whatever you can type on or whatever you need. Like, and maybe it wouldn't even be typing. Maybe it would be dictation at that point. Who knows? Again, I'm thinking farther in the future, and whenever I try to guess how far in the future, I'm always wrong. But I could definitely see a world where we don't need these full desk setups with 2 or 3 monitors and a keyboard and mouse and a big ass tower. Like we don't need that.
Yeah, Google Glass so ahead of its time. But outside of that, I think there's still problems. I think with these types of headsets, like one thing I have noticed is with recent updates, you could do a lot more hand controls, and maybe that's the replacement of the mouse. You're going to see people just waving their hands around or whatever. Kind of like when Bluetooth headsets first came out with for phones, you would always see people talking out loud while walking down the street. I'm like, who's this person talking to? They look so weird. Then they turn their head and you see this giant Bluetooth headset just poking out of their head. But I know I don't know what percentage it is. I looked it up once, but these headsets within 45 minutes give me a massive headache. And I think it's the virtual reality aspect. Maybe it's a little bit better with augmented. But my eyes and brain, I guess the way they're connected just doesn't trust the signal. And it gives me a massive headache because my brain becomes super confused. It's like, that doesn't make sense because that's not there. Like, it just can't handle it. And that's the only reason I believe we're not in a matrix. Because I'm like, I would have a headache all day long.
Well, that's why I specify like augmented reality and not virtual reality, right? Like virtual reality has so much more room to grow before it even has any cases in the business world, because it's not accessible, and that's something that's required for the business world. We have ADA law, etc. Not only that, but like there's a lot more people that are like visually impaired in some way. And when I say that, I don't mean blind. I mean like they have to wear glasses. Like VR just doesn't work for people that don't have perfect vision. And I have very good vision and I still struggle with it. Like, I don't think it's there yet. Augmented reality, however, doesn't have that issue because you don't lose the spatial awareness because you still see the real world around you. You're just overlaying things on top of it. And that's why I think that it's definitely got a lot more potential. Right now, we see a lot of people using it in entertainment with like Snapchat or whatever, like, Facebook Messenger for like doing filters, Instagram, whatever. And that's fine, but I think that's like the software version of it because it's cheaper to implement and it's not, it doesn't require all this like social stigma of like wearing glasses or whatever it was. Like Google Glass being ahead of its time, it got a lot of like negative flack too, right? And that's something that we could probably talk about when it comes to this too. But I'm super like I do think that there's a future here. I think it's just moving slower because the social adoption is taking longer because there's a lot of like privacy concerns, etc.
Unless I can be like Iron Man and just take and blow my suit apart and grab pieces and throw it back together, it's a gimmick.
But there you go. Iron Man has augmented reality right in front of him.
Yeah, that.
And you see him in his suit.
Yeah, green screen.
Who needs a whiteboard when you can do what he has in his workshop with the projected boards, right? Like the holograms, so to speak, right? Holograms back in like TV shows, like back like the early Star Trek days, like holograms were their version of augmented reality then. It's the same thing now. We just never quite got there. Although there have been attempts at holograms and they have been able to like project into particles in the air. The problem is like you can't have airflow. It needs to like stay still.
I want them to be able to replicate touch to me. Like I want to be able to look down at something and have it projected to me, but then I also reach out and I feel something.
They have gloves for that.
Yeah, whole different dimension.
They actually have like. Have you any of you seen like VTubers? Am I the only one that's seen that?
First time I've heard of it.
So VTubers are a concept where like they're people who put on like a full body suit, essentially. Not all of them, but most of them will have like a full body suit, and then they'll have an animated avatar for like live streaming instead of their actual like body and face. And then the avatar reacts to their body movements, their facial movements, etc. Like, so it's got all these sensors like on the face, on the fingers, on the like shoulders, etc. And it will react to that, and they can design it however they want. Like I've seen one that was just like a shark. Most of what you'll see are like anime girls because that like gets the monies, right? But at the same point, like the concept I find so fascinating. Like there's one that I really liked. Obviously, like I'm gonna say this, I don't endorse her content, so I'm sorry. I can't get behind it. It's a little too far for me. But what she's developed is so good, and her name's Code Miko. And what she did was develop her own VR. She coded it all herself. She bought the suit, but then she also developed all the software needed to do it. And she continually iterates on that over time. And from a technical perspective, what an innovator. Like she did a great job at that. But there are a lot of like, sensors and stuff like that. It wouldn't take much to do the same thing to also like have those sensors like push onto your fingers whenever you touch something, right? So that like tactile feedback is totally possible. The problem is like you have to wear something. Like there still needs to be something for you to touch, or there needs to be something like injected into your brain for your nerves to feel that way. And I think the latter is much less likely than the former.
I just think of that scene in Star Wars where they're playing their version of chess or checkers, whatever it is, and you can just see them pick up a hologram piece and move it. I want that sensation. I want to be able to pick it up, feel the piece, and put it down and have it be transparent.
Would you be okay wearing a glove for that?
As the first iteration, yes.
Yeah, I think that's totally doable. Probably could be done like tomorrow. Might already exist for all I know.
Well, there you go. There's your idea, people. Go
Yes.
out there, make it happen, send it to me, and I will test it.
I googled it. There's guys that are making full body suits, and you can go in your VR headset and then experience it, what you're doing, and it'll send the signals to your body. It's basically haptics for your
Yeah,
body
how
rather
much does
than
that
for your
suit
phone.
cost?
Let's see, suit,
Probably
and there's a glove as well.
It's not part of the suit.
The dev kit is 13 grand.
Could be worse.
Yeah, actually could be.
No, I will say too, I have a friend and he is a listener. His name's Sherd. I think I've talked about him on here before. And he told me a story about where he went to a virtual reality like theme park, so to speak. It was like a facility and they had like this big like Star Wars experience that you went through. And you put on a vest and you got a headset. And as you go through it, like as the blasters go around, like it can detect when someone, like let's say like his son was behind him and shot him in the back, like he would feel that. It's that like haptic feedback. And so I think that's kind of what you're talking about. And those types of things do exist. The problem is, again, they're not accessible, right? They're expensive, they're big, they're heavy, you have to wear them, those types of things. Maybe in the future, someday, you wouldn't have to, but that would be like implants. Like you need something to inject those sensations. But I do think easily with like like a Google Glass or some sort of like, wearable, you could play a game of chess with transparent pieces out in the world. And you could probably even do this with like a Microsoft HoloLens right now. And you could literally just like use your hand to make those movements. You just wouldn't feel them. So
Yeah.
I think we're close.
It's got to be all or nothing. And then if you could implement smell into it,
It sounds
gotta
like you
have,
want to be plugged into the Matrix, Shannon.
yeah, a little bit. And
Sounds
you
like
seem
it.
awful excited about something when you couldn't even handle like the 4D theater experience.
Oh no, I hated the 4D theater. And this is where I have to say too, like I like the idea of augmented reality. I'm not sitting here saying I want to feel those sensations. I want things like Excel spreadsheets on my wall so I don't have to have a monitor. I want
Get
to
a
be able to like
projector.
do a swipe like this where I could just switch between desktops without having to have 3 screens of desk space. I want to be able to like have a GPS on my bike without having to look down. Like I ride a scooter to work and it's really hard for me to look down at where my phone is mounted without like thinking about crashing on something on the sidewalk or hitting like a rock, because a rock is enough to throw my scooter off the sidewalk. Like I don't want to have to look away. I'd like it to be where I am so I know like which path do I take off of this trail to go to work. But then I instead I still have to like memorize it before I get off the bus. Like there's a lot of little things like that I would find like the quality of my life would improve by having something like that.
Do you not have the audio on your GPS to say, Kenny, turn right?
No.
Well, then it's your own fucking fault that you ran into the rock. You're just not going to sell me on this. It's like the Xbox camera all over again.
I'm not trying to sell you. I'm trying to tell people it's awesome, and I'm trying to prove to them that you have no idea what's coming for you, and you're a curmudgeon.
So let's go back briefly to our cooking episode and Shannon making steaks that are barely edible. Imagine augmented reality giving you a little alert in the side of your eye telling you, hey, your steak is medium rare if you want to take it off now. Or wait till it's well done and eat it with Allie. Wouldn't you like that little pop-up? They'd be like, ooh, my steak's ready.
No.
You'd rather just suffer through the bad steak?
Well, what's really funny
she can suffer through the bad steak. Mine's going to be fine.
What's really funny is the turns have tabled as far as Shannon and I's relationship here. I want to say this was 15 years ago when the smartphone first started coming out. Shannon was trying to tell me how awesome it was. And I'm sitting there like, why would I want to look at the internet on my phone? Like, I have a computer. This is stupid. And then I was also like, I was the type of guy back then that when I had a cell phone, I would just call you. Why would I want to use T9 to text? That's so annoying. It's so inconvenient. I could just call you and ask you a question. It's so much faster. Right.
I
It took
agree
me
with
a
that
while
today,
to get on the smartphone like train, and Shannon was all for it. And here we are now. Like, we've completely flopped. I'm all about the future stuff. Shannon's like, no, I'm gonna call you like an old man. I still use phones.
Yeah, answer your damn phone. It might be important.
No, I don't answer my phone ever unless it's
I
grandma.
might need to know how to do some type of medical emergency, and I don't have a pair of glasses and a powered up battery for the glasses to know how
Then
to
why
make a
the hell are you
tourniquet out of a
calling
belt.
me?
Luckily, you work at a hospital.
Don't call me. Call 911. The hell's wrong with you?
Still calling people. That's another thing. Who's going to go around and routinely charge these glasses so that you can take your defibrillators and go?
You know that we have people that do that with like fire extinguishers already, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same person. Just have them do the same thing.
Or in the cage that it's sitting in, you put in a wireless charger on the other end, and it's always charging.
Who's going to check to make sure that it didn't go out?
Well, that's the same people that are checking your fire extinguishers.
Get that brand new Cisco Splunk software.
We got to monitor those IoT devices. It's the future, Shannon. Embrace it.
It's not the future. I'm not going to do it.
This is the future that your kids are going to make fun of you for not embracing. They're like, what are you doing, Dad? This is how you go.
I'll spray him like a damn cat. Get away from me. I love you, but get away. And they run off.
But yes, if you like augmented reality or virtual reality, let us know in the comments which one do you like. Which one do you prefer? What are your thoughts? And then while you're heading down there to the comment section, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. But I think this wraps up another episode of Life in Cyber. Thanks to all our listeners for turning it. Oh my God. I'm leaving this one in. For tuning in, remember, if you enjoyed the episode, like, subscribe, like I just said, share with all your friends. Don't forget to put your questions, comments in the comment section below. All that good stuff. If for some reason you don't want to do that, or if you're listening on your podcast, you can always email us at podcast@lifein.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay secure, all that jazz. This is Life in Cyber signing off. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in.
Later, nerds.
Also, fuck John.